Honestly, that was a game the Bruins probably should have had.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things smoked beef, for better or worse. And I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. And it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. On today's episode, we are going to break down the storylines, stats, and signals from last night's loss to the New York Islanders, bring you the latest on Trent, Frederic, Oliver Wahlstrom, Brad Marchand, Matt Poitras, and so much more. Last night was a game this team should have won. Let's be honest. They got goalied and goalied hard by Ilya Sorokin. And we knew it wasn't going to be their night when they were up like 16-2 in shots. They failed to score on a power play, an opportunity on which the Islanders had already hit a post. And then Alex Romanov comes out of the box, scores, and you just kind of throw your hands up in frustration because everything was going Boston's way early on, and the numbers favored the Bruins overall last night. But Ilya Sorokin was just unbelievable, making save after save after save until David Pastrnak finally pushed through and pushed his point streak to 16 games. But the Bruins 0-3-2 over their past 5. And Pasha said after the game he would give up the point streak for the wins. He just wants to get the wins, get back in a winning streak, not focusing on anything else. It's a team game, and he's trying to do his best to help the team. And that he's doing. He's got 31 points over this 16-game point streak. Not the best math guy, but that is almost 2 points per game. He was credited with his 31st goal when his shot from the bottom of the right faceoff circle ricocheted off the stick of, you love to see it, Tony DeAngelo, snuck past Sorokin. That was the only shot that eluded Sorokin, and it had to go off his own teammate in order to find the back of the net. Brad Marchand, the captain, echoed what I've been saying for a while. He should be very high in the MVP candidate race right now. He's on another level, and it's impressive to watch him every night. He just creates so much for this group, and he's leading the charge right now. He's rising to another level, and he's one of the best in the league. It's fun to watch. Now, part of that MVP candidacy is usually making the playoffs. It's very rare that a player from a non-playoff team wins the MVP trophy. But if they can somehow sneak in, then, Pasta has to be on there. The Bruins had, get this, in all situations last night, the Bruins had 61.6% of the shot attempts. They had 66% of the total shots. 39-20 were the shots in favor of the Bruins. Scoring chances, the Bruins had 62%. They had 16 high danger scoring chances compared to 12 for the Islanders. And if you add it all up, the expected goals in this one, it's looking at shot attempts, shot quality, scoring chances, etc. 5.34 for the Bruins, 2.52 for the Islanders. So the Islanders were a bit lower than expected. The Bruins way lower than expected last night. And on paper, this is a game that they should have won. Ilya Sorokin taking it all the way to the bank for the New York Islanders, who picked up a big 2 points to stay alive in the playoff race. They're now only 3 points back of the Bruins with 2 games in hand. We'll look more at the standings update here in a moment. But this was a game the Bruins should have won, but Ilya Sorokin was massive in this one, and the Bruins simply got goalied on 2 fronts, really, because I believe it was in the second period, Matt Poitras had to leave the game with an injury pretty much caused by the backup goalie for the New York Islanders. Now, the backup goalie is in charge of opening and closing the bench door when players come on and off the ice. And Brock Nelson, Matt Poitras were skating towards the boards, sideboards, and Nelson pushed Poitras into the boards. It was a fairly innocuous play, all things being equal, except for the fact that the backup goalie Frederic had opened the door, even though Nelson wasn't really skating straight off. So he opened it too early. Poitras was banged into the open corner of the boards and suffered what was called a lower body injury, although it looked like it kind of got him in the ribs. Who knows the severity of that? If he had been hit into that area even harder, it could have been disastrous. At any rate, it looked very painful, did not look good at all. He had to be helped off the ice by both training staffs, and hopefully it's not too serious. We'll get an update here probably sometime on Friday. David Pastrnak of the play said it's unfortunate. As a player, you make sure the door is always closed. You don't want to see that. You definitely don't want to see a guy push him into the door, and hopefully Maddie's going to be okay. There was no update after the game from interim head coach Joe Sacco, and really unfortunate play there for sure. So Ilya Sorokin stole this one for the Islanders. Skarik with a very dumb door opening, injuring Matt Poitras. Nothing went right for the Bruins last night except for David Pastrnak extending his streak. And that's about the only bright spot last night. 31 points, 14 goals, 17 assists over the past 16 games, and he reached the 800-point mark over his career in the NHL. Just such an important player for the Bruins and playing as good as anybody in the NHL right now. So what does this mean for the Bruins with 1 week to go until the trade deadline? Well, their playoff hopes, again, took a massive hit. And we'll look at the standings and the signals to take away from this one here as the podcast continues. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get it in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is so easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com. Shot at every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Boston Bruins are mired here in a bit of a losing streak. They're 3-5-2 over their past 10 games. They have picked up a couple points recently, so it was their first regulation loss since the Four Nations break, but when you have Anaheim and the Islanders on the schedule. Yes, the Maple Leafs were in the middle of that as well, but you only come out with 2 total points over these 3 home games coming out of the break. It's going to be tough to recover from that. They now only have 22 games remaining on the schedule, and they're 4 points out of a wild card spot with 2 teams ahead of them also outside the playoff race. The New York Rangers have jumped back up. They've won 2 in a row. The Senators are level with the Bruins, having lost 5 in a row. And the Red Wings, Blue Jackets have really kind of separated themselves from the pack. They each have 66 points, 4 ahead of the Rangers, the Senators, and the Bruins for that final wild card spot. Even the Canadians only 1 point back of the Bruins now after having won 3 games in a row. If you look at the conference standings by way of point percentage, the Bruins are actually tied with the Montreal Canadiens. Only 4 teams have worse point percentages, including the Islanders, who the Bruins lost to last night, and an opponent that's coming up this weekend. So the trade deadline is 1 week away. I discussed yesterday why, while I may not be in favor of it, a Brad Marchand trade may make sense for the Bruins, although he sure sounds like a guy who is looking to still make a push this season, but believes that this adversity could help them next season. And that would mean he, as an unrestricted free agent, would indeed be back. Now, someone mentioned to me yesterday, too, that, they could trade him and get a nice haul. Maybe he signs back in the summer. But you don't want to maybe deal with that potential rift that could come up from trading the guy. Anyways, he said that fighting this year could get them into the playoffs or better prepare them for next season. After the game, Marchand said, "The biggest thing is when you go through adversity, and it comes in all kinds of different ways, it really just tests your character. You don't always achieve every goal you're shooting for, but that's what builds great bonds and great friendships when you go through this adversity together, and we're doing that." End quote for now. Now, that's encouraging to see because sometimes when teams go through adversity or they're not meeting expectations, there can be frustration, inner turmoil, guys kind of turning on each other or getting annoyed with one another. According to the captain, it's kind of bringing them closer, which is nice. And they're going to be on the road for 10 of 14 games in the month of March, beginning with back-to-backs on the road this weekend. So hopefully that bonding continues because they're going to be seeing a lot of each other on the road over the next month. Marchand continued, "Obviously, it hasn't been the season that we wanted. We haven't had success that we would have liked this time of year. But the good thing is we're coming together over it. And at the end of the day, we may not achieve what we hope to this year, but that doesn't mean we can't build for something great and bring it back next year. We're going to work every single day to continue to improve and build our game, and we're going to claw and fight every single day to get into the playoffs here." So that to me suggests a couple things. Brad Marchand, who's a free agent next year, very limited no trade protection now, could be a candidate to be moved before next Friday, but he remains intent on being part of the solution, sticking around, helping the team get back into the playoff race and building for next year. And you can easily make a case that so many things have gone wrong for this team this year and that they could be in a better position next year after a full, hopefully healthy offseason, which they did not get last year, after having Lindholm and Zadorov just having a normal offseason where they don't have to worry about where they're going to play next season. No Jeremy Swayman contract drama hanging over you. No Linus Ullmark trade. As it is right now, the Bruins, according to Money Puck, have a 12.3% chance of making the playoffs. And according to The Athletic, I think the odds are even worse. So looking into next season may not be the worst thing if they can, you know, determine as a team who is worth keeping, who's worth building around. The Athletic has the Bruins' chances at 19%, which isn't terrible, but certainly not ideal. That means an 81% chance of not making the playoffs. You still discount the Ottawa Senators, who have 24 games remaining, who are only 4 points out of it. Columbus, Detroit kind of separated themselves, but it's still pretty tight. And any one of those 3-4 teams could make a jump up. Brad Marchand saying the right things, talking about wanting to be part of the solution, preparing for next year, looking at the bright side, looking at things you can build off. And also, don't lose this in that quote, try to do everything they can to get into the playoffs this year. That's their ultimate goal. And nobody's going to be satisfied with a down season like this. And we'll see what changes are made and what the roster looks like in March heading into the final stretch of the season. The Bruins do have a few games remaining on the schedule before the trade deadline. We'll touch coming up on the weekend's action, but they have 4 games remaining until the trade deadline. Yes, Frederic ruled week to week with a lower body injury. He was seen in a walking boot. According to reports, it will not affect his trade candidacy. If he was ruled out for the season, obviously that would limit people wanting to acquire him. But as long as he's available at some point down the stretch, and of course, most importantly for the playoffs, there will still be a market for his services. And again, I'll be shocked if he is not traded before next Friday. I don't see him as part of the long-term plan here, or that they might be able to agree on a new contract considering his down season. The other bit of news yesterday was Oliver Wahlstrom being placed on waivers. If he's claimed, thanks for your efforts. Good luck on your new club. If he's passes through waivers, he'll likely be assigned to Providence, which might not be the worst thing for him. He hasn't looked great in black and gold. Very limited contributions, so perhaps a stint down in the AHL could help him get his confidence back. We'll keep an eye on the waiver wire here at 2 p.m. Friday afternoon to see if he is indeed claimed. Now, the Bruins do have a pair of games coming up over the weekend, and we'll briefly preview that back-to-back away set here as the podcast continues. Now, if you're like me, your mornings just have to start with a good cup of coffee. I got tired of settling for grocery store brands that weren't cutting it. That's why I turned to Trade. And let me tell you, their coffee is next level. Trade is the #1 specialty coffee marketplace in the U.S., bringing you fresh coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Their experts have taste-tested thousands of coffees, curating over 450 amazing roasts. Whether you're new to coffee or know exactly what you like, they'll handpick the perfect match for you. And in under a minute, they'll match you with a roast that was fresh, smells incredible, and tastes even better. My first bag was a game changer. Such a smooth, rich flavor, and I could actually taste the difference from my usual coffee. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering listeners 40% off your first order at drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. That's drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl for 40% off your first order. That's drinktrade.com/lockedonnhl. Now, if the Bruins have any hope of getting back in the playoff picture, they quite simply have to win tomorrow afternoon in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. Yes, the Penguins have a lot of talent. Yes, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, Erik Karlsson still in the mix and trying to do their best for this team. But they're one of few teams worse than the Bruins, and you simply have to take advantage of that. They were down big last night to the Philadelphia Flyers, were able to come back and win in overtime. But if you look at the Eastern Conference standings, the Penguins have fewer points, and they're one of only a couple teams with worse goal differentials than the Boston Bruins. Actually, they're the only team with a worse goal differential than the Boston Bruins in the Eastern Conference, and by quite a wide margin. Boston's at minus 28, which is terrible, but the Penguins are at minus 48, allowing a conference high 224 goals, 23 more than the next worst Philadelphia Flyers. So this is a team the Bruins just have to beat if they want any chance of getting back into the playoff picture. Just full stop there. Their goaltending has been very porous. Alex Nedeljkovic, I believe he's allowed like a goal on the first shot of the game in the last couple games, reminiscent of Joonas Korpisalo. Korpisalo definitely will get a start this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the net here against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And again, that's just a game that the Bruins simply have to win in order to get back. If they lose that one, then the game against Anaheim, yes. The game against Toronto last night seemed like nails in the coffin and the final dagger, but that one would really push it to you can't come back from that, quite honestly. Now, the Bruins play on Sunday afternoon as well, so they'll be in Pittsburgh for a matinee game, 3:30 against the Penguins, and they will travel to Minnesota to take on the Wild on Sunday afternoon. So some travel in there, crossing time zones. That could be a bit of a trap game for the Bruins, which makes Saturday's game even more important. Again, the Penguins 31st in goals allowed per game this season, 3.59. They had lost 4 in a row heading into last night's game. The Bruins have lost 5 in a row, picking up 2 points there. But still, this is a game the Bruins just simply have. The Minnesota Wild, obviously a very good team, even without Kirill Kaprizov in the lineup. They are in a playoff spot at the moment. 34, 21, and 4. Third place in the Central Division, trying to keep ahead of the Colorado Avalanche in that race. They do have a -1 goal differential, but the Bruins will be coming off that back-to-back. Let's see here if the Wild play on Saturday. That would help kind of level the playing field a little bit for the Bruins. All that said, every point matters for the Bruins if they want to jump into the playoff race. The Wild are off on Saturday. They do play tonight against Colorado, so they'll get a bit of extra rest after losing 6-1 to Utah last night. So they'll have a bit extra rest on Sunday, which will be to their advantage, also playing at home. Like I mentioned, the Bruins have 10 of 14 games on the road coming up here in the month of March, and they only have 9 wins on the road this season. They're 9, 15, and 3. So that's not very good at all. Obviously, that's really 9 wins and 18 losses on the road. 21 out of a possible 54 points or something like that. So uphill battle, 1 week until the trade deadline, and it's going to be very interesting. You're going to want to First of all, give this video a thumbs up. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button on YouTube, and you're going to want to keep it Locked On Boston Bruins for all the latest heading into the trade deadline. We'll be here covering each and every trade, each and every move, each and every solid report, and also the games coming up. I'll probably post a reel or a short after the game against the Penguins, maybe a full bonus pod if that's warranted. And yeah, just keep it connected here to Locked On Boston Bruins. Follow along at Locked NHL Bruins, at ENC McLaren, and we'll get you all the latest on our favorite hockey team that we stick with even when things aren't going great, which, hey, they're not right now. But we'll see what happens. Anything can happen, he says, hopefully, tentatively. Anyways, thanks so much for joining me here on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. I hope you all have a great weekend. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. We will be off tomorrow. Basketball. Catching up with some. Hope you all enjoy yours as well. And we will talk to you again soon here on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.